Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So this has been a long time coming. So today I would like to introduce you a blackjack game inside Notion. So this is actually not my first time trying. Back in 2022, so during the Notion 1.0 generation, so there was no automation. It's using Formula 1.0, there was no buttons. So it's just impossible to kind of fit in and build this thing. However, in 2023, so Notion actually graced us with Notion 2.0. So they introduced things like variables, which is LEDs, and then map filter, ID. However, there's still something missing. So since we're building a games, we actually need buttons. So this is the second coming of grace. Notion introduced automations and buttons. And that's the beginning of our blackjack game. So this is the blackjack game that we have. So the idea is that we have the dealer and player, and then we can automatically calculate the scores, and then we can draw cards. So this is an actual example with Notion. So you can just hit. You can see that automatically is calculating the scores, and then we can hit as well. And then lastly, you can click reset button to kind of reset the game. So for today's purposes, I don't just want to share the template with you. I want to kind of explain how you can build it yourself as well. So now that we're in the starting line, so we need to come up with a plan. So the plan is we need a game engine database. So this is where we will be playing the game. And next, we also have the card database. So we store all the 52 cards inside here. This is also where we track if a specific card is drawn. And lastly, we have the RNG database. So this is where we calculate which card should be drawn. We need to have a random number generator. So the idea, the trinity for this is that you play the games, you keep track of the cards, and then it helps you to generate to decide which card to draw. First up, we have the card database. So on the left side here, we have the title. Basically, these are all the cards, 52 cards. And this is the value that we assign. So by default, ace of hearts will be 11. And then we have the draw. So this is just a relation property to keep track of who has drawn the cards. So for example, here we have the dealer who drawn it. So you can see dealers here. Dealer has drawn the 7 of hearts. And lastly, we have the game engine relation property. This is basically just to keep track of all the cards for each of the players themselves so they can access to the card. Next up, we have RNG database. So since we're dealing with a card, we'll need yes, randomness. So it took me a while to kind of figure this out, since Notion does not have a random number generator formula. But then I remembered there's ID, which is automatically generated for every page created. So just like how Newton found gravity, I found the random generator database. So first we have the name property, so you can just name whatever you want, since we won't be using it. Lastly, we have the RNG property. This is slightly more complicated, since we're using the information from ID. So our goal is to create random numbers. And in Notion, there's this formula called ID. It generates a unique ID for each of your page in Notion. So that you can see all the pages have their own IDs in here. So page 1 to 4. So if you notice that when you share a Notion page to other people, right? At the back, there's like a random string of numbers. So that's actually your page ID. So it's not visible usually, but this is where you can use a formula to extract it. And you can do interesting things like, so you can do like go to and then put dot link and then put your ID. So you generate like buttons inside your Notion formula. Once you click it, you go to the page itself and clickable links to the page. So our plan is to use the ID to generate random numbers, but it has to be less than 52 because in Blackjack you only have 52 cards. So how can we limit it to only give 1 to 52 and also remove all these alphabets here because we only have one number? This is the formula to achieve this. I know it's complicated. I know. So let's take a deep breath and let's break it down. So first we have LEDs. It's more commonly known as variables. So the idea is that imagine you have a bunch of things lying around. It can be messy and tedious to keep finding them. So if you box them up, you have box 1 and box 2. We have all these furnitures there. So the next time we code, so we just need to type box 1 and box 2. So to use the items. So how this translates in Notion is that, so we have this example here. So ID without alphabet is the box, alright? And then ID without alphabet, we want to make this messy ID. So this is the one that we have into numbers only. So you can see that we only need to have numbers. So this is the formula we can use. So replace all, open bracket ID, and then open close, and then your A to Z. So it helps you to remove all the alphabets. Come is just numbers. So this is something called regex or regular expression. I won't go into details for today, but you can Google regex Notion, or you can find sources from Brett Gregory or Thomas Frank. So they have very detailed guides on this. So next one is ID length. So we want to know the length of the ID. So we're going to reference using the dot length, and then we're referencing the ID without alphabet. So you can notice here, we don't need to type the same thing again, since we just referenced this. And then by doing that, we get the 19, which is the length of the text. Lastly, we want to take the last 2 digits of this number. So in order to do that, so we have this thing called last 2 digit. And then we're referencing the ID without alphabet. And then we're using something called substring. So this is where we're using the length. So essentially, substrings allow us to extract text from a specific location. So you have the text here, you can notice. And then we have the start index and then end index. So you kind of want to know when you want to start from your letters. And then in this case, we want to get the last 2 digits from here. Hence why we need a total length. So which is 19. So if 19 minus 2 is 16, right? So this is where the idea is that 16 will be the start index. So we want to start from 16. And then we want to end in 19. Which guarantees that we will get always the last 2 numbers. So this will be our 16. And this will be our 19. And make sure you will convert it back to numbers. So our end result will be 9. But there's a problem. The last 2 digits can be more than 52. And our deck can only have maximum of 52 cards. So to solve this, we'll need an if statement. So if the number is more than 52, we divide it by 3 and also round it up. So this is something arbitrary that I came up with. But the idea is just that we want to keep the number low. And then so far I found that divide by 3 and round it up works for me. And if not, then we just keep the original last 2 digits that we have. So now we go into the game database. So in total, there are 7 properties here. You can see we have hand, we have card, RNG, score, hit, reset, display. You can think of the gaming engine is like a total combination. All the database just connect to this part. So relation properties, every time we draw cards, it will be updated. This will be added. And then all cards will be 52 cards will be linked here. So we need to identify what cards to be drawn. So for the formulas, so we have the RNG. This is actually just a number property, but we get the number 30 from our RNG database. So yeah, technically it's a formula, but not really. And next we have the score. This is how the score formula looks like. Alright, so now that I have explained the fundamentals, so we're going to go a bit more in depth in the Blackjack here. So you can see that this is the properties that we have. So as I mentioned earlier, score is just a number. And then we have this scoring here, formula. So this is essentially just calculating the scores based on different scenarios. So I won't go through the details for this, but one of the main headaches for me is just to kind of calculate the aces. So it depends on how many aces we have, because aces can be 1, can be 11. So it's extremely difficult to kind of calculate. So the more aces we have, so this is just the rules to kind of generate that. And then we have a hit and reset. Essentially, this is where I store the automation. So I'm going to show you the automation here. So when we hit a card, so what we're doing is that we're actually getting a random cards from the card pile and then destroy it using the RNG here. So the same thing for reverse, we have an automation as well to kind of trigger it. So to kind of reset the page here. So this is what you can see. And then for the display is basically just a display of the scores. And in combination, this is kind of how it works out. So you can have a jack of 6, heart. I'm going to just draw here. You can see there's a diamond ace here. So automatically become 21. But if I hit 1, you can see the numbers goes down as well. It depends on the rules of the scoring. So yeah, this is a little bit different format. I'll be sharing the template in the description below as well. So if you like this content, please follow and subscribe. Thank you very much.